The average scorer on the SAT might not even fully know what concepts are tested, right? They probably don't even know that there's a list of every single concept that's tested on the SAT and a list of previous questions that were given on the SAT just free on the internet that you could use. And also, they probably don't even know like what questions they find easy or hard. They just see all the questions as generally a type that they can improve on, and they don't even make the proper effort to improve by doing the right things. Now, a 1600 score might fully understand like every single question type and have everything like fully known, but they weren't always like that. Like the average score, they probably started out not knowing like what questions they find easy or hard or all the resources that they used. But through figuring that out and through getting the right information, they were able to apply the effort and have their effort actually be worth something. And that's why they got the highest score possible. I remember like before I was taking all the SATs and like getting into that process of my like second and third SAT, like way before then when I was just preparing, I remember like dreaming about a 1500. That sounds kind of corny, but like actually just dreaming like, okay, yeah, 1500 is what I want. Like that's my goal score. It would be really nice to have. And you might be having those same exact thoughts, but just like imagine, you want this 1500 and then like you go to create a plan. All right. So what was my plan going to be? I was thinking in my head, what can I actually do to improve? I know 1 hour of Khan Academy a day. Okay. And, like at the time I was like, okay, this is an amazing plan. I just prepare a lot on Khan Academy and I will get the score that I want. And like, my God, just thinking back to that plan is just, it seems so stupid in retrospect. Right. So like, why was that plan bad? I never really had a specific goal. Like, it's so non-specific. It's just practice for 1 hour a day. There was no method to actually increasing my score and working on the things that I had issues on, because you can't treat the SAT as like, minimal improvements are going to slowly increase your score over time. You have to prioritize the things that you got wrong. So that was my biggest mistake, and how it went, I didn't do too bad. Just the fact that I was putting in that much work every single day. Well, to be honest, I wasn't. I slacked off on a lot of days, but just the fact that I was trying to put in a regular effort and like generally half of the time I did, I got like a pretty decent score on my first SAT, but it wasn't what I wanted. So hi, I'm Karthik. These are 3 strategies to score above a 750 for both the sections on the SAT. All right, so the biggest accuracy killer. So in my opinion, this is actually like the biggest like killer to your score that I see, because when you practice, right, you're practicing with the idea that you're taking like sections of the test. Like I never see people like practice full length tests like frequently, right? And the reason why that's so important is because you want to be able to build the skill of actually taking the full duration of the SAT, right? You don't want to build this practice of just taking sections and having like day long breaks in between, because that's not how the SAT actually is. So how do you get to the point where you can actually take these full length tests and not feel mentally exhausted? Because that is the biggest killer, the mental exhaustion of the exam, which degrades your accuracy as you go through. So focus on your why, right? Why do you want a good score? And that's like partially what I did, dreaming of the 1500, I wanted it. It would be nice. It would help me in college. Like all these reasons that were good for myself that I thought were nice only to myself, right? So once you have that why, it gets very easy to get motivated to do this, right? So then you can build your practice in smaller sections. Like don't start off taking full length tests if that's extremely difficult. Do something that you can do daily or, like 3 or 4 days a week, like something that you can do in smaller sections and work up to getting to the entire test, work up to build to that so you can actually take tests weekly or 2 times a week that you can get good at it. The goal is not to take like a full exam once or twice and be done with it. The goal is to be able to take exams like frequently enough to where you actually don't get mentally fatigued by them, right? And this is the most important step, this is the biggest accuracy killer. People aren't taking full level practice tests. And that I think is like when you take the test and when you build mental resilience to be able to go through the full test without getting like exhausted, that's where you excel and you don't get the negative effects of mental fatigue. Okay. So taking and going over practice exams. Now I'm going to shift into this framework for taking and going over practice exams. I'm going to make like the list of things that you do to like create a system to go over the exams. And, in the previous section, I just focus on how you can get used to taking exams on that daily basis, right? but now you need to figure out how to review them. And ultimately, both of these parts together are going to increase your score, right? So what is a system that I use to review them personally? So this is what I find is useful, and I think anybody can apply this: a question order priority list, right? And what that is basically a list of your easiest and hardest questions. Why is that important? You need to know what to prioritize, right? That is the biggest like key of the SAT. You know, how you get a good score is you know what to prioritize first, right? So prioritize your easiest and hardest questions and then organize them, right, by like question type and concept. So if it's math or grammar, then it's a specific skill that you need to improve on. But if it's like a question order priority of like reading questions, then it's the type of question, like evidence pair, definition question, main idea, like that, right? So regularly test this skill, like this list out by taking practice exams and grading them and seeing what you get wrong more often. Okay, so what do you do now that you have your list? So you have your priority list, right, of concepts and questions that you are going to review, but you need to know in what order you do them. Work on the questions you find the hardest first. And why I say that is because that is actually the place where you put in the least amount of effort and get the most reward, as in more points correct. Because your hardest questions are generally your hardest questions because you don't know some fundamental concept or you haven't practiced them enough. If you just practice them more regularly, you know, you're going to get those questions more right more often, right? So if I can go from 0 to 50% accuracy with like literally just like 2 or 3 days of review, which is actually very possible for question types that you get wrong extremely frequently, that's going to be a huge reward for the least amount of time versus if I wanted to go from 90% accuracy to 100% accuracy of a question, which might take me weeks, right? So think about just how much effort you put in for the amount that you get. So as you practice more, your priority list is actually going to change. Like certain tasks that are going to be hard or going to be like easier, like certain question types or certain question concepts, they're going to move. So you need to constantly redo your list based on how good that you're getting. And you redo the list by like readjusting the list based off of how many questions you get correct, right? So in your practice exams, the questions that you get wrong or right, you're going to just adjust your list based off of that and just use that question priority, right? You should know what questions are hard for you, what questions are the easiest for you. You know, the middle section is kind of not too important, but you should know that because during the exam, you can use it to figure out what questions you want to prioritize, what questions that you think like, okay, this is what I have to do because all the questions are weighted the same, right? So focus on the questions that are the easiest, right? And give the least amount of effort / time to the hardest questions because that's going to be like your lowest bang for your buck, right? Lowest amount of like highest amount of effort and lowest amount of reward because they're all weighted the same. Okay, so how do we actually improve now that we have our list, right? Now that we know that we need to improve, what do we do to improve, right? So we know the skill that we want, right? So I said before, if it's math or grammar, right, it's the actual concept that you need to learn or master. You have to use outside resources to learn that. Learn the grammar rule, learn what the SAT is looking for. Khan Academy is great for this. It's completely free. And learn the skill that's being tested. You can just use any online resource, right? And you need to practice those type of questions once you learn what you've gotten wrong. Right now, reading is actually, there's no skill that you need to learn. It's merely practicing that type of question a bunch of times. So find those types of questions on practice exams or the SAT Suite question bank, which is literally a question bank of like questions that are no longer going to be used for the SAT. And you can use that to find the type of question that you struggle with and just do that again and again and again. Right. And going back to all of this, right? No method, right? This is just a method, like all of these, everything that I've said so far is just a method for improving your score. No method is going to instantly give you like, you know, like a bonus points. Like no method is instantly going to boost your score 50 points. You know, that's just clickbait, right? And you shouldn't believe that. Like true effort, it takes a long period of time, right? So, you know, like I said before, it's not going to happen next week. It's not easy. It's not something that's going to be like very hard, but it's very simple. It's simple because you know exactly what you have to do. It's just hard to do it, right? And that's actually a benefit because you already know what to do. If you follow these steps that I've given you and stick to them for like 2 to 3 months, I will guarantee you see a significant score improvement, a very significant score improvement to what you have now if you just follow this framework. It's the framework that I use to improve my score after my first SAT, and it worked out really well for me. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you learned something.